I feel really passionate about women that underestimate themselves, their skills and abilities, and they sell themselves short by going and getting some entry level position for minimum wage. It doesn't have to be that way. I think franchising provides significantly more personal fulfillment, significantly more financial return. But ladies, you got to believe in yourselves.
Hello, and welcome to the Perfect Franchise Podcast.
I'm Chris, and joining me is my wonderful co-host, Andrea.
In this podcast, we're on a mission to help you discover all that franchising has to offer.
We'll explore expert strategies, interview successful franchise owners, and give you the tools to make informed decisions.
So whether you're considering your options or you're ready to take that plunge, we're here to support you every step of the way.
So let's jump into today's episode.
All right, great. We have definitely a different episode here today for the Perfect Franchise. I am really excited about this. We brought a great group of women together to talk about women in franchising. And so I want to welcome two of the consultants on our team, Emily Anderson and Julia Berman. They've been great consultants on the Perfect Franchise team. They've been in all sorts of different roles in the franchise space, so I'm glad to have them on. And then Rebecca, who actually was a client of the Perfect Franchise. And so Rebecca, we're really excited to have you on and have that perspective of what does it look like going through this process as a woman in franchising. And so thank you to all of you for being on today. And so let me start out, and I kind of want to, I want to pull sort of a statistic that I looked up that I thought is going to help us as we get into this. So about 30% of franchises are women in the U.S. So only 30% own franchises. So that was a 2025 statistic, but that's up 10% in the past 20 years. And so it's definitely growing. And there was another survey that looked at, asking, what do you think is going to happen in business ownership? And 80% of women think that there's going to be more women owners in the next 10 years. And so I think those are really good statistics and something that I kind of wanted to jump into with this podcast. And so Rebecca, I want to kind of start with you because you've been through this process, you've chatted with us, and I think start us out a little bit and tell us, what made you chat with the Perfect Franchise? And had you thought about business ownership before sort of jumping into this?
Definitely. I was in corporate America like most of us for most of my career. And I went back and got my MBA later in life with the idea, like in my 30s, thinking that at some point I might want to do my own thing. I had a lot of ideas along the way. And then that dream, that whole idea sort of got postponed, and you get back into a corporate career, you're on an airplane, you're running around. And then as I move forward, and there's difficult situations in every job schedule you ever have, but I started to get tired of traveling. There were some other difficulties I came across, and it was the right timing. I had franchising in my mind over the years, but I had never really deeply taken a deep dive into it until a gal had reached out to me, and it was just the right timing for me and asked me if I wanted to consider it. And it was an immediate yes. So she quickly set me up with David Floyd, and we started the conversation, and everything just rolled from there.
So Rebecca, fill us in a little bit on your process. So you came into the process thinking maybe this is the right time. Tell us how your journey went throughout this process. How did you approach it?
Well, I think so. The slow roll, when I say sort of like a slow roll, it was like a 5 to 7 year itch where I started to consider how else can I make a living? What else can I do? What's fulfilling to me? And during that time, for me personally, that meant taking some tours in Southern Colorado by myself, doing some journaling, starting to document what my thought process was, what I thought I was looking for, what I was missing, not just professionally, but like personally. What did I want longer term? Just sort of taking myself out of the compartmentalized Monday through Friday grind that it can be, and segmenting out what else I want in life and how do I get there. And it definitely was not overnight, but it was sort of a slow roll into what else can I consider to start to get some of these things that I want down the road in life. So I sort of set myself up emotionally and spiritually and psychologically to change the game up. And how am I going to do that? What are the different ways of doing that? And I definitely did plenty of research as well on buying out other companies, what are the ways can I get into the market? And then slowly started to listen and read about listen to podcasts about franchising and, smart articles about franchising. And that process of having a blue book playbook versus just doing it on your own and the statistics around that just made a lot of sense to me. As risky as it seems to go out on your own in the first place, for me, franchising felt like a much safer bet. And as I got closer to knowing that I was at a spot where I would actually take that leap, it led me to a franchise option.
Well, that's great. Thank you for that. So
Yeah.
Emily and Julia, from your experience, do women sort of approach this process, this evaluation of franchises a little bit different than men?
Loaded question. Julia, you want to take that first?
Sure. I would say yes, but not in a limiting way and more of a holistic and values driven way. I think women tend to evaluate franchises through a bit of a broader lens than men do sometimes. They're not just asking, will this make money? But will this fit into my life? Will this reflect my values? Can I show up for my family and my community? I think that's a big part of it. Will this business, will franchising allow me to be the mom that I still want to be and fulfill those roles? And that means a lot of times they dig deeper into operational realities, support systems, the culture behind the brand, not just the financials. And not to say that men are only focused on financials, but I think those other things become even more important in the context of, women approaching the franchise evaluation process.
Rebecca, you're such a great example when you talked about, journaling and doing some reflection and really, rather than reacting to external stimulus, if you will, I feel like women can be very adaptable to our surroundings. But like what Rebecca did is she took some time to really focus on who am I and what do I want? What do I want my life to look like? That I think is such a phenomenal starting point to set a foundation where male or female, but in this case, we're talking about women, where we look at ourselves first. What are my needs? What are my goals? Rather than trying to fill everybody else's needs first. So, who am I? What do I aspire for? And then, what's the best path for me expressing that? So, I
No,
love
thank you.
Great.
I appreciate that. And, at the time, you don't know where you're going. You're not sure exactly what this process is going to bring. And that in itself is like the start of the uncertainty, right? Because being in the unknown is a little scary and making big change is scary, but it's kind of helps piecemeal your way there. It's like, let's build the roadmap. We don't even know where we're going, but it helps with that confidence to say there can be something else. And it makes it a lot less scary as you start to envision what else could be. So thank you for that, Emily.
well done.
Great. So Rebecca, you chose woofies in the pet space. So talk to us a little bit about why did that click with you? What made you say this is the right brand for me?
So there's the obvious things like, my love for animals and dogs and all things fur babies. That's awesome. I love that that's part of the business. But honestly, that's not the most important part by any means. I mean, you can fulfill that niche that you like in a lot of different ways. I considered a lot of others. I looked at some home decor companies, some painting companies, preschool that I was in love with. But at the end of the day, as far as what made sense for me, I had to consider my financials. So, I launched this on my own. And so, what do I have? I mean, realistically, how much money do I have here to get things started? To how much time do I have to get things up and running so that I can support myself and be happy with the product? This won't be my first venture, I'm sorry, this is my first, it won't be my last. So trying to be realistic financially was one. And then, so that meant looking at the terms and conditions of what it takes to buy into any of these particular franchise options. And then most importantly, I'd say too, was the leadership, like meeting the operations team, the founders. It was two women that founded the company. Could have been two men. I'm not trying to say that was a, check the box there. But they had a really amazing, compelling story. And when you meet them, all the folks that were in charge, they were so approachable. And having had come from a corporate environment that wasn't always great, it was so amazingly eye-opening that people could work collaboratively, even if they're like it was a different working environment, different kind of relationship building process. So that was so refreshing. You could ask anything. There were honest answers. If they didn't have an answer, they'd tell you they didn't have an answer. It was just the most engaging, natural, like relationship, professionally that I'd seen in a long time. So that went a really long way as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. So it really just felt like the right fit. So, Julie and Emily, do women sort of get drawn to certain brands? Is there trends where you see them gravitate towards, particular sectors or brands versus, something maybe men would gravitate towards?
Just throw out a disclaimer that I have opinions on things, and I'm going to speak in sweeping generalizations, and I hope I don't offend anybody. But I've been doing this for well over a decade, and what I have found is a couple of different things. I think a lot of women have a natural gift at being able to hold space for people when it comes to their meaningful relationships. For example, someone has an aging parent, someone has a special needs child, someone, loves their dog as if it was, their own flesh and blood, if you will. And so when people have these really, and these would be clients of a lot of our businesses. These are clients of Wolfie's, Rebecca's business. I think a lot of women are really gifted at holding space for people that say, I have a loved one and I need help with my loved one. Right. And so I think women can balance kind of a nurturing, how can I help you as my client? Also with the ability to excel in operations and financial management and leadership. So I feel like women can do both. Now, that doesn't mean women have to own a business that's dealing with seniors or children or pets, but I think that opens the door to those opportunities. Also, I have not as often, but some of my female clients over the years have gone into male dominated industries, whether it's tech and IT or home services where they manage blue collar employees. And some women say, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't see myself doing that. Other women have said, I've played in this arena my entire career. And I have a distinct advantage by being a woman in this male dominated environment. I stand out. Right. And so I think what it comes down to, like it does for all of our clients, is who are you? What's your comfort zone? Who are you comfortable interacting with? And then kind of gravitating, dotting the I's, crossing the T's as you hone in on the specific businesses they're in.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
really great. Julie, anything to add?
I think that's a really great point. And Emily hit on something that I often like to share with my clients, my female clients, is that even if it's not an industry that typically we see a lot of women, or at face value on the surface doesn't seem like it's an industry where you see a lot of women, that doesn't mean that they can't. And I think on the surface, a lot of my female clients initially gravitate towards businesses that they relate to: beauty industry, fitness industry. And as they learn more, because our process is so educational and we peel back the layers and the characteristics associated with each industry, sometimes they find that there's a lot of characteristics in other industries that they relate to, and it's finding what's important to them on a deeper level. Is it female founded? Does it have a strong support system? Things like that. Is there flexibility? And that becomes more important in what the business does specifically, and what industry is less important. And so I see it shift through the process. And so the short answer is, at the end of the day, I don't see that there's just specific industries that resonate more. I think how people start and finish the process of evaluating a franchise, that changes for a lot of my female clients.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I think we always say the perfect franchise, boring businesses, do really well. And that doesn't matter if you're a female or you're a male in that space. And so looking at even some of the home services, and I think Emily, you hit on this point, it's something they first say, okay, I have to work with a lot of men that may be doing the labor piece of it. And so they have to maybe say, is that where I'm comfortable? But at the same time, there may be meeting with a homeowner that typically the woman of the household. And so there may be a better connection for them. And you may want to open up your door as a customer more to someone coming in that's a woman and feeling more comfortable with that too. So there's definitely aspects of all businesses where they don't have to just gravitate towards, beauty industry or those need-based spots. But that is where a lot of women kind of look to. And so, you talked a little, Julie, about support and women looking for that in the franchise. So, Rebecca, one of the things I want to ask you is, who do you look for sort of support, mentorship? Are you looking for other females to say, hey, and you mentioned kind of doing it on your own, being single. Are you looking for other people that fit into that bucket to say, this is someone I gravitate towards. Tell me how you do this all on your own where you don't have another income coming in. So fill me in a little bit on how you look at that.
Absolutely. I mean, and it does go back to I didn't necessarily go in saying, hey, I want to work for two female founders, but that's the way it worked out. And is that great? Yeah, it is great. That foundation that they built, it was so evident as they're blowing up internally, their own business is really expanding, but that didn't change their demeanor or the conversation. They're the same grounded females through the process, which is so refreshing. And that trickled down 100%. And I talk to new franchise owners that are trying to make up their mind coming into the business. And I tell them that it's growing drastically, but that same mindset, those women are still the same women. They haven't changed their behavior. And the entire operations team and everyone they brought in to support us is the same way. So there's a couple of women within the Woofie's structure that I meet with still, once a month. We used to meet once a week, and then it turned to once a month, and I transferred from, one support team to another. The transition was really smooth. I tell folks all the time, I've had more support in this franchise opportunity from a leadership perspective than I've ever had in any corporate job I've ever had in my life. So 100% lean on the team. It happens to be women internally that I work with like on a monthly basis, but we also, as franchise owners, the group of us that went and explored the franchise together, so did sort of like the foundation work, and then the group of us that trained together, we all stick together too. And we get on a call once a month, we exchange stories, and that's a combination of male, female owners. So always grateful to have folks to look up to talk to negotiate terms with, talk about different ways of doing things. Absolutely fundamental to my success.
That's great. And so, Rebecca, obviously you left sort of corporate America to go do this on your own, which I think is great. I think one of the other type of clients, it seems like it gravitates more towards women in this space where they've maybe been a stay-at-home mom. So they maybe they left their job a long time ago, and now they say, I'm ready to do something else. I have more flexibility. The kids are either out of the house, they're in more sports, or they're into college, and now I'm thinking about going back. But I noticed, I don't know, Emily and Julie, if you noticed this, a lot of those women are a little bit nervous. They say, I have no skills. So they're kind of debating, do I go back to corporate when I've been out for so long, or I don't have any skills. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. So tell me, how do you typically approach that? It's hard, right?
It makes me crazy because I've worked since I was 14, 16 years old, right? I've worked my whole life. And I had the honor of being a stay-at-home mom when my son was born for 2 or 3 years. I also homeschooled my stepdaughter during this time. And what my girlfriends would tell me, Emily, you got to get back in. You're not on LinkedIn. You have to get on LinkedIn. Do you know the latest version of, whatever software platform? And they were so riddled with fear, like on my behalf. They're like, you've been out of the game. You got to get back in. And I don't know why I didn't buy into their fear. I think because I knew what I'm doing right here, right now with my family is more important than the fear-based corporate culture, right? Um, And what I love about franchising, what I love about women in franchising is this is about who you are. This is not if you know the latest version of Microsoft Word or Adobe, right? This is how do you show up with people? Are you a good communicator? Can you follow a process? Do you like to be involved in your community? That's a big part of a lot of businesses. If you have been a stay at home mom, believe me, that job is way harder than running just about any franchise I've ever experienced. Because you think about it, there's a franchise that it's about following the process. And Rebecca just made a brilliant point that I don't think a lot of people realize. I think when I'm working with people and they're thinking about joining a franchise model, they're thinking about being on their own with the franchisor. But what they don't realize is that they are a part of what we call a franchise family, other people that own that franchise. And before we started recording, we were joking. I mean, Julia, I hope you don't mind. Julia and I have been in franchising for years, but we started with this organization together at the same time. We talk to each other about 5 times a day. I called Julia my work wife. I just spent 30 minutes with Andrea yesterday. We're colleagues and we support each other. And it's the same thing in a franchise. Okay, I'm talking way too much, but can you tell I feel really passionate about women that underestimate themselves, their skills and abilities, and they sell themselves short by going and getting some entry level position for minimum wage just so they can have work life balance for their families. It doesn't have to be that way. I think franchising provides significantly more personal fulfillment, significantly more financial return. But ladies, you got to believe in yourselves.
Julia, Rebecca, anything to add to that? I know. It's like bomb drop. I totally agree with all of it.
Truly bomb drop. One thing I'll say is if you talk to women that have been in corporate America, how often, and not just women, I mean people in general, right? But especially when you talk to them, and they think about going back to corporate America, and how many times do you hear people say, "I feel like my skills are being underutilized. I'm doing a job, I'm sitting at a desk." And my skills they're not getting the most out of me, and I'm not getting the most out of, my skills. And I think that's where Emily is so spot on. That's where you get to use those skills that you're not using at a corporate job. Those are what you're leveraging as a business owner, as a franchisee, right? And so being able to take all of those and that truly are inherent. A lot of them you can't teach. How do you put those to use? So when people question, going into franchising and being a business owner versus going to corporate America, feeling like they don't really have those skills. They've been a stay-at-home mom. I just placed a client like this, and her husband was her biggest cheerleader. And it was so awesome because she had 4 kids, had been a stay-at-home mom for the last 16 years. And, he was like, she's amazing. She does this and she does that and she does that. And I don't want her to go throw herself to a 15-hour, $15 an hour job. She's amazing. And it was just so awesome to see, that support. Not everybody has that though, but it is great to have someone in your corner, just reminding, these women that you're so much more than a stay-at-home mom, right?
Yeah. Well, and can I piggyback and just say you're so
Yeah.
much more than just going back into corporate America, not digging in corporate America, but sort of saying that it's like you have this versatile skill set. And so often, whether it's minimum wage or even if you're getting paid well, it's still, you're boxed in. It happens a lot. You're sort of fixed in a certain spot. You're not allowed to necessarily grow or change. It's somebody else's rule set. It might be a good rule set. It might not be a good rule set. But when it's your own company and you're there for the right reasons, then you get to grow that direction and use all those skills you have and care about the community, get to know the community, give back, all those things that matter that so often, at least in my career, I wasn't able to do in corporate America. I mean, I was that gal that was working with most of the other guys in the tech world. And yeah, did I stand out? Sure. Sometimes for good, sometimes not so great. It's so much more fulfilling having my own business and really being able to go after those things that matter to me.
I love that. And the only last thing I'll add to everything you ladies just said is I often say to women, especially if they've been out of it a while and they're trying to get back in, it's much harder to get out there and get a resume and get past those bots that are scanning your resumes, get through HR than with a franchise. it doesn't matter. You can use your skills. They're transferable. Everything you did, that overscheduling, just like Julia's, the client's husband was saying, just so many skills. There's so many skills out there that you don't have to have the exact skills that you had for a franchise. It's very broad. And I think that's the greatest part about franchising. You don't need a background in exactly what they do. They're going to train you. They're going to teach you. They're going to support you. You just got to find the right franchise for your skills and the right support system behind that. I think that's really great. Well, I know we're running up on time, so I want one last question, and this one's going to be for you, Rebecca. So, if another woman is out there and she's thinking about franchising but isn't sort of sure if she wants to go down that path, what advice would you give?
I would say don't get too stuck in indecision. It's easy to spin the wheel and overthink. Narrow down your options. There's 1,000 options, but narrow them down. Just try and be a little more concise about how many things you're considering, and don't be afraid. You're going to make mistakes. Like, don't be afraid to make the leap. It's scary, but there's much more reward to be had than there is negative. So just believe in yourself and go for it.
That's great. Great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, I love this episode. I know, we're doing this in a positive spin. Like, we want more women. So that statistic that I gave you early on, women are great business owners. There's a lot of skill sets that we have. We seem to multitask really well. I know that's difficult. So I look at all these women that come in the process, whether you're someone who's leaving corporate, whether you have, a spouse to sort of support you, or whether you're coming into this as a stay-at-home mom. There's lots of different ways to approach business ownership. But I think this is definitely sometimes even a greater path where you can really use your skills. And so it's not just for men. So we really want women to look into this. And so I think this is a really great episode. So I appreciate all of you coming on. So if you're thinking about franchising, remember that while there's no one size fits all, the perfect franchise for you is definitely out there. To explore your options, visit theperfectfranchise.com and click on Let's Talk to schedule a call with a consultant on the Perfect Franchise team. We look forward to connecting with you again on the next